Welcome back to Hey on Track Frankfurt, the Bundesliga podcast covering everything there is to know in the English language about Eintracht Frankfurt Frauen. That's right. This is a end of the season recap episode. Today will be all Frauen talk. Our next episode will be the men's recap. I wanted to wait on that one to get some finality in the Champions League match this weekend, Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund, which will determine where Frankfurt ends up playing in Europe next season, which is kind of a big topic of discussion. So, appreciate you tuning in for this Frauen recap. I was going through my notes, looking at the best person to bring in for this episode. There's one man. He's probably hanging out on a beach somewhere. I probably took him away from that. John out in Delaware. How you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty great. And don't worry, it's getting rainy here, so no beach for me today.
I'm feeling terrible for you. Just So we didn't do an episode after the last match day. By the way, I missed this one off the top. How to get in touch with the show, because I'm just such a great host. On HEFpod.com, HEFpod.com. We got the links to all the social pages, our Discord chat, all that good stuff. On X, formerly Twitter, at HEFpod, and at Hey on Track Frankfurt on Instagram. Now that we got that stuff out of the way, and I'll actually read my notes so I don't forget what to do next. Real quick before we recap the season, the last match day of the year, that was Monday, May 20th. Eintracht Frankfurt 1, Cologne 0. Nothing to play for in the league. Everything was sealed up, I think top to bottom. Even the relegation was taken care of at that point. John, I didn't get a chance to see this one. Did you tune in?
I did not. I forgot that the game was at whatever it was, 8 a.m. in the morning. So I woke up like partway through the second half and never got a chance to tune in.
You know, I kind of think that's how everyone felt. When there's nothing on the line, the last match day of the season is just kind of a drag, especially when it's that early.
On a Monday morning, too, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I don't know if there was a holiday in Germany, but either way, it just seems like a really weird time to have a season-ending match. But anyway, going out with a victory is nice. 1-0 against Cologne. Geraldine Reutler, 27th minute goal. Probably should have expected more in a match against Cologne, but it was cool. Played some young kids and got some good rotation in there. So ending on a high note, the way they ended the season is something we're going to talk about here in a bit. But let's go right back to the beginning. As the Sound of Music says, that's a very good place to start. So maybe we should have not had our expectations quite so high at the start, but we were feeling good at the end of last season and knowing we were qualified for Champions League, at least that playoff tournament we were going to be hosting at home. There was a little concern for me coming out in a preseason friendly against Nuremberg with a 0-0 draw. I know it's preseason, it's a friendly, but that is a league foe, and I kind of, I would have expected a little more from that. But certainly getting the legs going before hosting that qualifying tournament at home at the Deutsche Bank Park. I thought it was a good showing by the crowd, not the best showing, but certainly for some lesser known names coming into town, the names are kind of what draw in that preseason or early season qualifying tournament. But coming out at home against a Farum team, taking care of business 3-0. I'm sorry, that was the friendly. Slovako was the qualifying match, the 1-0 victory, a little closer than I was really comfortable with. I think we got that one early. Yeah, Prasnikar in the 24th. And then the second day, I think that's where we all said, hey, we're going off. We're doing big things. We're going to win the whole damn Champions League, because Juventus beating them in the penalty kicks really felt like we were exercising demons from the loss to Ajax last year in the same qualifier. Just the way that was so dramatic of a loss, this was every bit as dramatic of a win. and to be at home felt good. I remember talking to you after that one. That's as high as I've been on this team in the 4 years or so now that I've been following them. What do you think of that tournament?
Absolutely. It was a good time. Honestly, the match against Slovatsko, sure, we only won 1-0, but we pretty much dominated that whole game. Yeah. Obviously, it gets nervy when you're in a tournament like that and not able to put away all your chances. But, came away with the victory. And then, again, that Juventus game was something else. And so worried, especially early in the shootout after, they saved 2 of ours early or something like that. Yeah, Hanshaw and Pavelek. And then, of course, when Johannes made that last save, that was an incredible high. Definitely one of the highlights, if not the highlight of the season for me, for sure.
Yeah, that one was tough going down early in the second half, and it was one of those matches where you're like, damn, like they're due. They struggled to score the day before. You didn't want to come out and get knocked out at home. But I thought the response, the Prashnikar goal, lit the building on fire. That place, it sounded like there were 50,000. Might have been 20,000, but it sounded like 50,000 in there.
No, the crowd was great after that. And, of course, Freigang with the little chip on the goalie at the end that hit the post. That was – when that happened, I was like, oh, boy. But, I pulled it out.
Yeah, but certainly a great way to open the season, advancing in the Champions League to the group stage, which we'll jump back into in a little bit. Right after that, went back to the Pokal. Not a lot to talk about. Advancing with an 8-0 victory over someone I've never heard of. And then we got into league play. And this is where the start of the season could not have gone any worse in league play. We dropped the opener at SGS Essen 2-0 and then get pummeled by Wolfsburg 4-2. Just right from the start. It turns out that Essen was much better than anyone thought they were going to be, and Wolfsburg was their typical selves. But, man, it just felt like all the momentum of that Champions League advancement was gone in the first couple weeks, always being back. We had talked about how they had to be almost perfect through the season to have a shot at the title, to have a shot at direct qualification, and this was anything but a hot start. I'm not going to say that's where the questioning of the coaching came into play, but certainly you can't be dropping those points, especially at home. I know that Wolfsburg match was at Deutsche Bank Park or Waldstadion, but going down 4-2, if you're going to lose to the best team in the league or one of them, that's fine, but you can't get pummeled like that. It wasn't even as close, I think, as the scoreline indicated.
No, that scoreline was definitely flattering for us. We definitely got pummeled in that one. And, losing to Essen that first game, I'm just looking at the shot totals now in that Wolfsburg game. They had 20 shots, 8 on target. Jeez. And then, of course, third league game of the year, we play Leipzig, and they score early on us. Obviously, we were able to come back and win that one, thankfully. But it definitely wasn't looking good early in the year. But the match against Bayern, at Bayern, I think really kind of started to turn the season at that point, which I think came right after the crushing victories against Sparta. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how that plays out. So we're struggling to score. We're struggling to win. It was kind of a roller coaster because that's, if anyone doesn't know, the German word Eintracht roughly translates to roller coaster. At least that's what it feels like when you follow this club. Maybe I shouldn't do comedy because that's not even close to the right translation. But that's how it feels, man. When you go, you win in a shootout and then you pummel an unknown in the cup and then you go drop 2 in a row in the league. It's like, what do you got to do early in the season to gain that momentum? Well, we absolutely pummeled Sparta Praha. So opening the Champions League Group A, Barcelona, Benfica, Eintracht, and Rosengard. Pummeling Praha really kind of put things on a path for me that I think, I don't know. Where am I looking? Here we go. That Bayern match, that was on the road, right? The 0-0 draw?
Yeah, that was at the Allianz too, but not a super big crowd in that one, as it was a torrential downpour that day.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there might have been a little bit of looking ahead to that second leg coming up, but with a 5-0 lead, I don't think there's any issues with it. Just really getting the team going, and it's hard balancing multiple competitions at the same time. But they took care of business against Bayern, getting a point on the road, a real tough match. That's the one where the weather kept changing like 10 times, I think. And then the Women's Champions League, advancing there, taking care of business, then getting back into it in league play again. Duisburg and Bremen victories. Leverkusen, another one where we probably should have taken all the points. Just frustrating. Now you're in November and you're still not putting everything together. We blew a late lead, 88th minute, blew the lead in that one. Just a really difficult situation. But then you got to get right back on your feet because it's Champions League time again. And like I said, Group A had Barcelona, Benfica, and Rosengard. That was looked at as one of those groups of death. Barcelona needs no introduction. Probably the best team in Europe over the last 3-4 years.
Not even
Benfica had a lot of talent, as we'll get to. What'd you think of that group? An honest assessment going into it. Did you think we had a chance to advance?
Yeah, I thought going into it that we would end up in second. Obviously, I don't know how to watch the Portuguese Women's League, so I wasn't super familiar with Benfica's side. I knew that they were going to be tough. Obviously, they had done really well in the league recently. Yeah. But I thought that we had enough talent to get second, and I still think we should have. Obviously, we'll talk about that later, though. No question that Barcelona was going to finish on top. No losses for them. They only had one loss this entire year as a whole, so yeah. And then Rosengard, I didn't know exactly what to expect out of them, but they definitely seemed like the weakest side in the group, and that came true. Obviously, only beating them 2-1 in the first round was maybe slightly concerning, but the one goal that they scored was super late, so not too big of a deal.
Yeah, I think that one being on the road in Sweden, and if I'm not wrong, I think that's actually out of calendar for them. I think that's a summer league over there at the women's side. But
pretty sure Sweden and Norway do summer, yeah. Yeah.
So, maybe a little underwhelming there, but we came back in match day 2, and I've told this story 100 times. I was in the tunnel heading over to Canadian Thanksgiving over in Canada with my wife's family, and my phone blows up. Did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? The Laura Freigang goal. And I'm in the tunnel pulling up to the customs booth, yelling at my phone. And I'm shocked I didn't get searched further by the agents there. But really, I don't think we could have asked for more. I know we fell on a 3-1 total loss there, but the ladies came out playing. Watching that replay, it felt like there was chances where we could have been up 2. And certainly Johannes saved our ass a lot of times. The better team won for sure, but I had a good feeling. There's no moral victories ever for anyone, but maybe a little bit of a good feeling coming out of that one, right?
I think if you can ever say there is a moral victory, it's winning a single half against this Barcelona side. Obviously, early in the game, they had some pretty good chances, and Johannes bailed us out. But as that half went on, we started to really take control. And Freigang scoring not very long before halftime was that was another one of the best moments of the season right there, and was just so incredible.
For sure.
You saw the emotion that she showed after scoring, and everyone felt it. Obviously, they came out in the second half, scored, tied it up pretty quickly, and then 2 quick goals 10 minutes later or whatever. It's hard to beat Barcelona, nearly impossible, and to only lose 3-1, honestly, I'll take it.
It might be one of those things where you wish there wasn't a halftime, because I think if things had kept rolling, you didn't give them a chance to go figure it out, maybe things would have turned out different. But, hey, that's the rules of the game. After 45 minutes, you take a water break, and, good teams, that's when they make their adjustments. But it wasn't
to be fair, with their depth, I don't think a no halftime would have worked out well for us.
Yeah, exactly. And then things move on. We were playing 2 games a week for a while, as the women's game always has way too many breaks in the calendar, and it's frustrating. You get in a rhythm, and then you fall out of it. Then was a concerning match, though. We knew we needed to take at least 1 from Benfica, and 2 if we could. But damn, did we struggle in that first one. All right. So we lose 1-0 to the first Benfica match, December 13th. And then on the 21st is the 1-1 draw, which really just felt like running in sand. I don't know how that Benfica team finished. Did you mention it a minute ago? In the league this year, I'm not sure where they finished. But that was a damn good organized team. That Benfica team was like running in sand into the wind, uphill. No matter what we did, no matter how much pressure we brought, we just couldn't get anything going. And I think that's where this season took a little bit of a dark turn, where you're not playing terrible. You're, taking care of business at that point in the league. We had an unfortunate draw against Leverkusen, but then we beat Nuremberg. We beat Hoffenheim. We beat Freiburg 4-0 on a real nice match day.
Yeah, that was good.
That Freiburg victory with Don Staniomi, just a real awesome showing there. But then 2 weeks in a row, the Champions League against Benfica, it was brutal to watch. Did I delay long enough for you to get that standings?
Yeah, so Benfica did win the Portuguese league this year. They only finished 2 points higher than Sporting, but both of them finished pretty far ahead of the next best.
Okay, that makes me feel
they only had 2 losses the entire season in the Portuguese league.
Wow. The tough part about that one too, to have that draw that pretty much, it didn't really eliminate us from Champions League, but we knew we needed both of those Benficas, or at least one of them. Otherwise, we were going to have to beat Barcelona to get back on track, and we knew how that was going to go. But the frustrating part is we had to have a 3-week break after that demoralizing draw against Benfica.
Yeah.
And I don't think we recovered for a while because things got really rocky.
And that was really unfortunate timing for the break, too. Rather than the break come in halfway through the group stage, it had to come. Obviously, we go to Benfica, did not play well that game. That was one of the sloppiest games I've seen in a long time. And then to, the Fry getting missed penalty in the second game against them. I mean, obviously one of the most demoralizing experiences for the Frauen team. And yeah, to have the break after that, really just, that was really hurting. And yeah, I mean, it set us up for a tough road in the second half of the season that we weren't able to recover from until nearly the very end.
I had it in my notes, and then I removed it because I thought it was too negative. But Laura Fragen, God bless her, she's one of our best players. She's an Eintracht legend. She's terrible from the spot. She sailed a couple
the only
penalties.
One she made was that one
she
against
doesn't
Juventus.
place it. Yeah, and outside of that one, 2 or 3 misses this year. I don't know if she had 2 misses in a single game or in consecutive games, whatever it was. Another one late in the year.
Tough.
I forget which match that was, but for how prolific of a scorer she is, she just doesn't have that composure from the spot. And that's how it is with some players. You can't be the best at everything. That's clearly not her forte. I just hope next time she gives the ball up to somebody else in that penalty situation.
Yeah, and unfortunately for her, I mean, this whole year was kind of trying, right? Obviously, there were some good moments. The goal against Barcelona was incredible. But overall, I mean, it was a tough year for her. And I just wonder if, over the summer there was a lot of talk, I guess. I didn't see all of it, but apparently there was a lot of talk about her possibly leave, or other teams having interest in her. Obviously, she wanted to stay and did, and we'll see what happens this summer. And I just wonder if some of that maybe kind of got to her, maybe the World Cup exit as well. Yeah, I don't know. She was just off this year, which is very unfortunate from one of our best players. And if she's back with the team next year, we need her to step up again.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, Laura Froggen played at Penn State University here in the U.S., and she's been a favorite of the Americans here because of that connection. But when you have those outside distractions, and when you're so prolific your first couple years in the league, and then you have those distractions coming in, it takes a toll. Even on someone as good as her, even someone who works as hard as she does, I think her best games are the ones where she's not even scoring. She's just putting pressure on the ball and making the right plays and taking up the attention of defenders, allowing other people to move.
Yeah.
It's no accident that Nicole Aniomi had the years that she did and came on as strong as she did. Part of that was because of the attention that Laura Froggen draws. And, you know, the X's and O's, that's not really part of the season recap, but we've gotten all the way up to the end of January, basically, and we haven't even mentioned Nicole Aniomi, who's far and away the best player on this team this year. Would you disagree?
Yes and no, because I was thinking about this before the podcast. Like, who's the MVP? Who was the best player this year? And while I think there's a very good argument for Aniomi, I think I still got to go with Dunst for this year. She had, I mean, obviously she was better in the first half, and I think Aniomi was better in the second half. But just the way that she can control the midfield, I think, really. It was so impressive to me this year, and obviously she got on the score sheet a bunch and assisted a bunch. So for me, the best player this year was Dunst.
I can't argue that. She does a really good job of controlling the tempo of the game, and that goes both ways, offensively and defensively. She kind of dictates the pace of play for the match, and you can see the difference when she's not there, when she's not having a good game. It's far too open for anyone's liking when she's not there.
Yeah.
While we're talking MVPs, I think I got to go with Stina Johannes.
That's a good shout. Yeah.
We struggled to score goals like I think we would have preferred, especially in some important games. I think without her timely saves, we might not have held on to that third spot. You know, I don't know. The thing is, when you're on a good team, a team that's qualifying for Europe, there's so many players that are involved in making that happen. But there were times this year where our back line was not as strong as they should have been. We gave up way too many shots. Giving up, 8 to 12 shots on target against bottom half of the table is, not something you're supposed to do. And I think she bailed us out a few times. But
she definitely did. And she performed very well in some shootouts. So.
Oh, yeah, for sure. She advanced us in that match against Juventus.
So, that was all her.
Yeah, so Champions League, we come back there in late January, lose to Barcelona, and then it's effectively over. 5-0 victory, match day 6 against Rosengard again. Eintracht finishes third in the group with 7 points, 2 behind Benfica, who advanced. Obviously, we're going to talk about next year's Champions League later, but I felt this experience was important. I know they didn't advance. I think maybe that'll make them a little more hungry, and they know what to expect next year. Because for all the experience that this organization has, as far as under the old FFC brand, where they're one of the winningest teams in the history of Europe, this particular group of personnel did not have Champions League experience. And I thought it was important for them to get that taste of it and maybe leave still a little bit hungry for next season. Not that we wanted to lose, and it was kind of disappointing the way it happened. But I'm encouraged by what we saw in the fight that they showed. Is that fair?
Yeah, I would completely agree. And I definitely think that losing out in the group stage will make you more hungry for next year because we felt like we should have advanced. I really think that we should have. And, getting that second place, moving on, losing to round at 16, you're kind of like, all right, we did a great job. Let's try and do this again next year. Whereas you lose in that, get third place, don't even make it out of the group, and you're like really mad. I'm excited to see what that brings out of the players next year because the expectation for this group should be getting out of the group in Champions League.
Yes.
And if not, even winning in the round of 16. I think that we have the squad to be able to do it. And now these players have tasted that. Obviously, some of them did play for FFC Frankfurt, but not when it was in its heyday. So they don't have the experience of the winnings that team had. So now with that experience, I think that'll really help going into next year for sure.
I agree. Coming out of Champions League, it was a prove it kind of week because they had to rebound against SGS Essen, who had beaten them on match day 1, and they took care of business.
Mm-hmm.
Came out, got the clean sheet. Wasn't pretty, but they got it done. And then coming right back midweek with a Pokal match. I think that might have been a weekend. I don't know. But against Freiburg in the Pokal, an absolute beautiful match. One of my favorites. Again, the late goals, which became an issue in the Rückrunde, but with Shakira Martinez and Brenna Henshaw scoring and really saying, hey, this one's over. Let's go full rotation. And I just thought that match, that week as a whole, getting a league win and a cup win, coming off the disappointment of the Champions League knocked out, really said a lot about the character of this team.
Yeah, I would agree. And that Freiburg match was really good. We should have won that game by more than just 2-1. That was a really good performance, and it showed good character in this side, and obviously that continued out to the very end of the season.
Yeah, the next 3-game stretch was probably, or 4-game stretch, probably our most difficult of the season. Certainly, we got punched around really wickedly. For as good as we responded in those 2 matches, the next 3 against Wolfsburg, Leipzig, and then Pokal win, which Bayern. I'm not going to talk about. But the loss to Bayern, that 3-game stretch, Wolfsburg, Leipzig, and Bayern, I think the Leipzig match was the worst in my mind because that's the one you're supposed to win. And again, Leipzig wasn't as bad as I think some people had expected, but they really took it to us in that one. That's one where we were out of it from the start. We were outmatched. They were physical, and we were not. Chiba made it respectable in extra time, but other than that, there was just, there wasn't a lot to do in that one. Passing accuracy down in the mid 70s, all the possession in the world, but not sure what to do with it. Just a frustrating way to play the game.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one too with Leipzig. They obviously they beat us out in the Pokal last year and performed very well in the Zweite Liga. And so it was like, oh, maybe they can do something this year. And then to begin the year, we're really terrible. And obviously they came on strong in the second half. And I think that's more to what they truly are. They're going to be at least a mid-table side going forward. Obviously, it's still a team that we should have had a much better performance against. But then, we respond the next match day against Bayern, and obviously we lost that game 2-1. But we played really well in that one, and that was very unfortunate to lose that. I think we had more possession, we had more shots, obviously not as many on target, but that was a really good performance coming off of a bad loss, even though we did end up losing that one.
That one for me is that we started this, we didn't really start it because I touched on it a couple minutes ago. We continued this issue of giving up late goals. And another one there, this one wasn't quite as late in the 77th, but it became a pattern that in games where we played poorly, we're giving up late goals. And I don't know if that's a pattern. I don't know if it was just a matter of circumstance, but that's one where I thought we're officially out of it because we left an opportunity to win a match on the table, especially at home. You leave those points there on the road, you can overlook it and say, hey, at least we got one out of it. But we lost all 3 at home in a match where we probably should have taken all 3. That rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, at the very least, we should have drawn that game. And once they went ahead, I think that kind of killed it, which was unfortunate. But yeah, I'm glad they responded after that, even if only beating Duisburg 2-1 isn't the best showing against one of the worst sides that's ever been in this league. But it's still a response after a good game that you blow late, and it's it could have been very, very demoralizing, but
yeah, and back-to-back league wins there. Then you got to go back and play Bayern again. The thing is, we knew we were going to play Bayern when we played them in that match at home. We knew we were going to have them in the Pokal semifinal on the road. And that's one where I felt pretty high going into that. I thought that it was a revenge game. There was reason to feel good about it. I felt really good about it, and I thought they responded really well. That was as up and down of a match as you're going to see. Bayern scores early. Eintracht scores a tying goal just a few minutes later. Reuteler ties it up. And then
that shot was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would argue all 11 starters were major contributors to hold that Bayern side as tight as they did, as long as they did. Just really, to get that even to penalties, to me, was remarkable. But falling 3-1 to Bayern in penalties. And by the way, how many do you take, John? 5, right?
You take 5, but we didn't get that far.
We didn't get that far. That's because you have to hit the goal to have any chance in the penalties. If you're sailing them or hitting them wide, they don't count. It's just something that blows my mind. The quality of penalties that we've been taking, or that we took in that match. I can't complain about Juventus, but that's one to forget. And at that point,
that was awful. That was just,
for how high Juventus felt, this felt the complete opposite, because the opportunity to go to the final was there. And at that point, it looked like we might be out of the Champions League race. With 5 weeks left, we had a lot of work to do. We didn't have control of our destiny at that point. But then we came out and laid another egg. 2-0 loss to Leverkusen. And another poorly timed international break, because then we have 2 weeks to think about that horrible loss to Bayern. It should be a rule that you can't have a 2-week break after a horrific loss. It doesn't sit well. It doesn't taste well. It ages like milk. And then we go out and lay an absolute egg against Leverkusen, who I think they beat us twice this year, didn't they?
No. First game was a draw, but they smacked us in that game. That was bad. And don't get me wrong, they were good this year, but it's still, you don't want to come back from international break and set up your charge to third place with a loss like that. Yeah. We struggled against the mid-table this year, much like the men's side did. They did the exact same thing, where the points you need to take were the ones that we just could not get. And at that point, we kind of said, hey, let's just play out the rest of the regular season. But then the league starts kind of having chaos go all over. Some bad teams taking points against teams. Hoffenheim fell apart late. And then we had a head-to-head against Hoffenheim May 4th. That really swung the pendulum the entire way back in our favor. 3-1 victory against Hoffenheim on the road. Eintracht Frankfurt finishes with 4 straight victories, scoring 10 goals and allowing really bad math. 6-7 in return. Efficient games, not big blowouts, no 5-0s or 4-1s or whatever, but efficient games where they're protecting the ball, they're managing the play. What we saw the last month of the season, what I was hoping to see the entire year, because it was very balanced, it was very organized. They were moving the ball back to front, and I don't think any game showed that more towards the end than the victory 4-2 over Freiburg on May 13th, where our efficiency numbers were off the charts. We had 2/3 the number of passes that Freiburg had,
and the passing accuracy, the heat maps on that game are absolutely insane. The amount of pressure that we were playing on them was really the game that put everything away for us and said, hey, we're Champions League qualified again. And that felt good. For all the roller coaster that was this season, John, I think it's fair to say this was a Champions League quality team. Am I right?
Absolutely. I mean, the wins at the end of the year against Hoffenheim and Freiburg really cemented that. And obviously our performances against Bayern in all 3 games were extremely impressive. So, yeah, I mean, this side is obviously a Champions League quality side. I think that the table is a little flattering towards us at the end. Hoffenheim just had an epic collapse at the end of the year. I don't think the international break hurt anyone more than them because, before that, hell, they had just beaten Wolfsburg, Freiburg, come back from that break, draw with Köln, lose to Essen, lose to us, lose to Leipzig, lose to Bayern. They should have been a lot closer to us. But at the end of the day, I do think we have the better team than them, and we played better than them for the most part in the season. So, this is a Champions League level squad, and what we did this year should be the bare minimum going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Hoffenheim fell off late. Essen really came on late, winning 4 of their last 5. I don't know what kind of resources they have for next season, but they could be dangerous because they play tough. They play with a chip on their shoulder, and that's not an easy one to face. To give a quick rundown on the top 4 before the break, the top 4 in the league, Bayern wins the table with 60 points in 22 matches. Wolfsburg on 53 points, Frankfurt 44, and Essen with 35. So really quite a bit of separation between the top 2, and then there's us, and then everybody else. At the bottom, going down, Nuremberg, Duisburg. Maybe the worst season in the history of the women's top flight. I'd have to do some research on that, but minus 48 goal differential, 0 wins, 4 draws to their credit. That's how they got their 4 points. But yeah, if they didn't
have Mahmudovic in goal this year, oh my God, it could have been just so ugly. I mean, it already was. It already was, but it could have been so much worse.
Yeah. So we're gonna
that was pitiful.
We're gonna take a little break, then we're gonna do some jumping around. I got a few different questions to ask you, but before we take a break, let's talk about what we're drinking.
All right.
What do you got?
I have right now a Neutrino Pale Ale by Equilibrium Brewing. They're based out of New York. So that's all right. I've had some of their IPAs before and I like them, but the pale ale is okay. Does the job though.
Good stuff. I could lie to you, tell you I'm having something really delicious. I'm drinking a Michelob Ultra.
Oh, trying to watch them calories.
Yeah, so why did I get these? Oh, I was watching the PGA Championship. I'm a golf guy, and when I'm watching golf, I just sip a lot. They go down way, way, way too quick.
That's very true. Yeah.
So I needed something that wasn't going to destroy me calorically. I could still I'm going to finish the 2, 3, or 4 here, and I'm going to go do a workout because it's water. But
yeah, no, you have a few. It's not going to do too much to you.
No. Anyway, that's it for segment 1. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Hey, Eintracht Frankfurt, episode 315, our Frauen Finale for the 23-24 season. Back for segment 2 with John out there in Delaware. John, I got some questions for you. After we recap the season there, I got a few questions for you. We know who's leaving, a few important ones. Backup keeper, Karabazil, Shakira Martinez, I don't think there's any argument Verona Henshaw is the biggest loss. What kind of impact are we going to miss from her? I mean, obviously a lot of players bring similar tools to the table, but I feel like she was really a glue person there, and we're going to miss that a lot. Is she replaceable, or is that one of those we're going to struggle to get it done? Think, without Jabril So on the men's side type of loss.
So, I mean, if the announcement had just been made that Henshaw was leaving, then I think I would have said that she was irreplaceable. But it was announced a day later. There had been some rumors going around that Nina Larson was the replacement for Henshaw. And obviously she's not been with this group for years like Henshaw had, so it might take a minute to get adjusted and bring the presence that Henshaw did. But she's such a talented fullback, and she does everything that Henshaw does. Maybe not quite as great at the back as Henshaw was, but she does all the set pieces, crosses the ball really well, just a really, really solid player. And so I don't think we're going to see the drop-off like you mentioned about Jabril So. Losing him in the midfield really did hurt us, but I don't think we'll see that drop-off. But it will take a minute for Larson to get acclimated to the team for sure. Losing Martinez is so unfortunate as well. I wish that Nico had played her more, because every time she played, she was so impressive. Whether she was scoring or not, just always dangerous and making stuff happen. I think that's one that we're really, really going to regret, especially given the ages of the players. Henshaw is 30, if not older than 30 years old now.
30, yeah.
And whereas Martinez is, 21, 22?
21.
And so she's only going to improve over the next couple of years, and I think that one's the one that's really going to bite us.
I know the Martinez one, certainly she was my favorite player. It's one of those things where she was homegrown. I understand why she's leaving. She deserves a better opportunity. She's still young enough. Yep. She is going to contribute somewhere and do big things. I just hope it's not against us. It's just tough.
Yeah, hopefully she leaves Germany, right?
Yeah, right. It's tough to work her in when you have the kind of talent that we have up front. She doesn't have the versatility to move her further back and say, well, get her on the pitch, see what she can do. She's really an up front, push the ball, uses her size to motor through everybody. But that doesn't work if you move her back. And that's kind of unfortunate that, that one trick pony is really not what we need in the circus right now. Kind of frustrating, but you know what? We wish her the best of luck, because she really scored some big goals for this group. And it's hard when you see a player off the bench go and you talk about that being the biggest loss of the year. Like that's how deep this group is. That's how good this group is, that we're missing the bench players because they had that kind of impact. Let's talk about signings for a minute. A couple new signings and a couple re-signings. We talked about Basel heading out. We signed one of our junior keepers, right?
Yeah, so we brought signed Lena Altenberg. She's a U19 keeper. I don't really see her as the replacement for Clara Boso, though. I think she's more the replacement for Hannah Johan, who's also leaving, her third string goalie. She's going to play in college. I forget exactly where, but so I think Altenberg is going to be kind of that third goalie who might get a few games here and there, but will mostly play for the second side.
So are we still shopping?
We need another.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we need another goalie at least, because we can't just roll with two anyway. So we'll need a third somewhere. And then, speaking of signings, it was her, Larson, and then Elisa Sense is the other major signing coming in. And that's a really big get from Leverkusen. She could play in the sixth role. I don't think that she will for us, and I don't think we need her to, especially if Pavelek, recovers from her injury. Although I still think that should be Grave's spot. But, she can play as a 6 or an 8, and will provide a lot of depth for us in the midfield. If not, do some rotation between her, Dunst, Reutler, however we want to set up.
It feels like half the season was spent talking about the future of Sophia Kleinern. Getting that extension done really was a breath of fresh air for all of us. We were holding our breath. Like, the longer it went, the more it felt like one of those big names was going to swoop in. And
I kept seeing from like January until the extension was signed, Real Madrid interested in Kleinhern, Real Madrid interested in Kleinhern. I'm like, oh no, we can't lose her now.
And they have a little money over there. That's the problem. Like, we're playing, Champions League ball on a Bud Light budget. But really, like, it shows the fabric of this group that these people don't want to leave. Fragging doesn't want to leave. Kleinern doesn't want to leave. Even someone who's struggled to find a lot of time, and Anna Eiling is coming back.
Yeah.
Like, these are that's how you build the depth. That's how you advance out of these tournaments. That's how you make deep runs. I'm really encouraged by this, and that leads into the next question. I think that we're going to put the Nico question to bed. I think the way the group finished, I don't think anyone's on the Nico out bandwagon at the moment. If you are, I get it. We're all a little bit frustrated finishing third, but look who we're finishing behind. Those are good teams. Did I want to win the Pokal? Did I want to advance out of the group in Champions League? But we lost to maybe the best team in women's football in Barcelona. Bayern is no joke. Wolfsburg's no joke. And we're showing competitive opportunities against those top teams. Now, he's got to find a way to make sure this group is not dropping points against Essen, against Leverkusen, against Leipzig. Those are the ones that we need to be upset about. Part of that comes with maturity and learning to play in 3 different competitions at the same time. But am I safe to say that the Nico hate can be shut down for a bit?
Yeah, and yes, I'm obviously not necessarily his biggest fan, but I mean, you can't ultimately sack him over a season like this. I think it's a similar thing to the Dino question with the men's team, is like, the results are good enough for what we are as a club and, the resources that we have. It's the way we went about achieving them that leaves a little bit to be desired. And obviously this is Nico's first time, handling 3 different competitions. So maybe he can learn from that. And my biggest issue with Nico is just, he doesn't rotate the squad enough, and he doesn't use the substitutions enough. And it's just the same tactic every game.
Yeah.
He doesn't adapt to the opponent. And I think he could benefit from learning from this year, from, whether it's the losses, draws, not making it out of the Champions League, all that. I think he can learn. And obviously, he's a homegrown guy. He's been with this team forever. So you want him to succeed. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm not Team Nico out right now, but for a little bit of the year, I was definitely on that side.
It's interesting because he's a very lighthearted guy. He's very casual. He's not a hard ass.
No.
But then you look at the way he structures his lineup, the way that his players play positionally on the field. You would like to see them have the ability to have some freedom, and maybe make some substitutions at the 60th minute instead of the 75th. Just one of those things where I think as he learns and gets to trust some of these young players a little more, maybe that will change. We don't need him to grow up. He's been around, like you said, forever. He knows the game. He's played or coached some of the best players in the game. But what he has to do is trust his gut. And I think sometimes he's looking at the paper and, the analytics of the situation, as opposed to when we can see on the field, so-and-so is tired, or this combination is not working. Drop this person, bring this person forward. He's got to encourage that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree.
So with all that said, we don't know the Champions League draw. We do know that we're going to be in the qualifying tournament there. Same formula as last year. Not sure yet where it's going to be. That draw comes later in the summer, I think. I'll check with Brian on that one. He'll be all over it. But what's the ceiling here? I mean, we all want to say top two. I made the mistake of doing that last year. But when you look at the top two in this league, cracking that is going to be more difficult. Now, I think we've made steps with the Larson signing. Extending Kleinern gives me major confidence. But we also got to be buyers, too. And we're not buyers if we're going to take that next step. So what do you think our ceiling is as things stand right now for next season?
I mean, I definitely think the ceiling is second. I don't think that we'll be winning the league, especially if we go into next year without getting some more reinforcements for the back line. I think that's our biggest area of weakness that we need to improve on. But I do think that second could be a possibility. Wolfsburg is having some turnover. You know, they're losing Pajor, although they'll be replacing her with Berenstein. They're losing Oberdorf. She's going to Bayern, which, of course, I mean, now they've got a midfield of Stanway and Oberdorf. I don't think anyone's getting through them next year. Yeah, that's unfair almost. And they'll be replacing her with Janina Minga from Freiburg. So, you know, they're losing players, bringing in some players. Wolfsburg's head coach is also leaving after next year. So they're in a bit of an interesting retool kind of era that maybe we can be able to pounce on. You know, we've got, for the most part, young players who are just improving. So I think there's a possibility to go for second, but it's definitely going to be very hard. Obviously, I think that's the ceiling. The floor should be third. And obviously, I think we should get at least to the semifinals of the Pokal and hopefully out of the group stage next year in the Champions League.
Yeah, I don't disagree with all those points except the Pokal. I think we have to go to the final. I mean, that's tough because it's that kind of tournament where absolutely anything can happen. And we know from both sides of the men's and women's competition that everything does happen. But seeing as how close we were against Bayern, that's just got to be unacceptable. If anything short of the final next year, barring, you know, crazy circumstance, a wild goal or something like that, major injury, what have you. But the expectation to be, you know, a couple games better in the league because we gave up some points that we generally wouldn't, to be one game better in the Pokal and one game better in Champions League would have put us through to the next round. So that's really what I want. Mm-hmm. As far as the Bundesliga, you know, we finished with 44 points this year. Last year, we finished with 54. 2 years ago, we finished with 46. 3 years ago, the COVID year, you know, mid-table, 30th or 30 points, good for sixth. So the 44 is our lowest point total post-COVID. And that, you know, for me, that's not acceptable. So if we're expecting 2 to 3 games better, that puts us up in that conversation for number 2. So I'd take that if you asked me to sign up for that right now and we could simulate forward like we do in Madden, I'd be all for it. But we got to play the games, right? And there's still going to be signings. There's still going to be movement this summer. So we got a lot to flush out before we get to those Champions League qualifiers.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that was fun. That was a lot of rehashing the memories of the last 9 months. But in just 2.5 months, 2 months and 2 weeks, we do it all over again, which is crazy the way this calendar pretty much goes year round now. But it's been fun, John, and we're going to do it again with a men's review coming next week. And we appreciate everyone listening this week. John, where can we find you on social media so we can talk about how much you think you know about the women's game?
Fair enough. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Ben_JBen. That's Ben with 2 N's, and on Instagram at JohnBen33. Follow my Twitter, and you can hear me rant about all different kinds of women's and men's soccer and hockey and football. So definitely don't follow me.
I say that sarcastically because you'll pull out a name from a team on the women's side, and I watch a lot of the women's. I watch more of the women's game than the men's game right now. But you pull these names out, and I'm like, kind of like Brian does. Brian will find a fourth division striker in Finland, and I'll be like, how do you know this? It's crazy. No, but I appreciate you coming on this week. We'll do it again soon. Of course,
I appreciate you having me on.
You can find me at C in the D 313, Peloton, Instagram, Discord, all the socials, and the show, HEFpod, HEFpod.com. We really appreciate everyone checking out the statistics zone there. We're going to be revamping that this summer. We had a crazy number of hits the last few weeks. I don't know what happened, but people were following stats. Maybe the good weather, everyone was outside. But we got some features there that are not available from ESPN and the other sports networks. And we're only going to make it better for next season. So check out HEFpod.com, the Instagram, Discord, Twitter, all the links are on the site there. And we'll be back next week to talk about the men's season recap and what that means for our European competition next year. Until then, cheers.
You take 5, but we didn't get that far.
We didn't get that far. That's because you have to hit the goal to have any chance in the penalties. Hey,